Hey guys, welcome back to another
everybody.
episode of our podcast. And today we have a special treat for you guys.
Yeah, we're going to be sharing our testimony.
Yeah, which we never did before. So
Yeah, we just felt like it was important for you guys to know a bit more of who we are because obviously you guys are watching us and
yeah, I mean, at least you guys get to learn a little bit more about us and learn more about how we navigated through a lot of different seasons of our lives.
Yeah. We're not perfect, and I'm pretty sure we've made it perfectly clear we're not perfect people in our videos, but I think our testimonies, we go through things in life for a reason.
Yeah.
And our sole purpose of this podcast is for whoever watches this video to know that they're not alone when it comes to things in life. And if we share parts of our life that we can, I mean, we're pretty transparent people, but hopefully it will be fruitful and helpful for someone out there.
Be encouraging, to someone.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we met, our dating life, marriage.
So how we met. I'll let you take it.
So we had a very awkward meeting, first meeting, but we met at church small groups.
Yeah.
Prior to us meeting, though, you were attending the church for like a year.
Almost a year. I think it was like maybe 9 months.
Almost a year. It's a church plant.
Yeah.
And I had just gotten back from nursing school abroad. Yeah. And the church that I was going to abroad was connected to this church somehow. And so I had messaged the church prior to moving. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come visit. And I didn't make it a priority when I first came back because I was just getting situated. But the church reached out to me like, hey, are you going to come visit us? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I held my word in visiting.
Yeah.
You didn't see me when I first attended.
Yeah.
But
the first time you stepped into the church, we've never met.
Yeah, I actually met his parents first during a prayer meeting. So that was probably, we didn't meet till like the second week or so that I started attending at church small groups.
And I think really quick, we'll just share context of where we are in this season, right? Yeah. So for me, I was in a season of like really coming out of a weird relationship where God pretty much, a gentleman in the church prophesied over me during a revival night of, because I was in this phase of like God, like seeking God, asking him, what do I do? What do I do in this relationship?
That was like a year before we met.
Yeah,
right?
This was like a year before we met. And I'm just like, okay, what do I do? This relationship is like very on and off, and it's just like, okay, do I keep do I stay in this? Do I seek this relationship, or do I just let it go? And that was just a season that I was in that led up to a revival night at this church, or worship night, where a guest pastor came and prophesied, just out of the blue, just prophesied over me, stopped at me, and was just like, hey, I feel God telling me to tell you to let go and just focus on Him. And granted, he didn't even know what I was going through. Like, I didn't share with anybody what I was going through. We're still pretty new to the church. And I'm sitting there like, dang, like, how do you know what's going on? Like, I just felt
Tripping.
like, I was like, dude, this dude knows, like, are you smart or something? Yeah, like, how do you know what I'm going through? Because, like, he literally just said, like, God is telling me to tell you to just let go and focus on Him. And that, I forgot to mention this, but he also said that he said that God has something better in store for you. So I was like, okay. And so after that, my whole focus was just God. Like, I was just serving in the church. I was so focused on my relationship with Him. That was my life. I was just working. 2013, it was basically the year after I graduated high school, and I was just working and focusing on God and figuring things out. And then
we meet in 2014.
We meet in 2014, and then we'll pick up from you where you were in that season of life. And
for myself, I was more so the same, just focused. I was previously in a relationship, like engaged, but 2 years prior to me coming back, since high school, I was in a relationship since I was 14 with my ex or whatever. And so when I was starting to know who the Lord was and who I was in the Lord. And when I just started to think about my life, if I do get married to this person, is it the way that I picture the Lord would have for me? And then I started to think about family and all kinds of things. And so I ended that relationship so that I could fully focus on the Lord and who I am in the Lord, because I always knew of God, but I didn't have a relationship with him, and that's something that I craved. And so I broke it off, and I came back to Vegas, and I was still focused on the Lord. I wanted to get plugged into a church, though, because I wanted to meet other people around my age who had the same drive for living their life for the Lord. And so I made it a priority to get plugged into a church. But obviously I moved back to the States and I got everything situated first. I actually was going to attend another church prior to the one that I met you at. But it just felt like, okay, I made a commitment to go visit this church.
Like you said, yeah, you were going to come check it out.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, let me go check out the church. And so I remember, it's funny because I wasn't even going, I remember it was scary for me because most of my life I went to church with someone in my family. And to go out of my comfort zone, go into a new environment where I didn't know anybody was a little scary. Like, I remember I sat in the parking lot. First thing, it didn't even have the church's name that I knew that they were renting out a space. Yeah. And I didn't know that. So I was like...
renting from another church.
Yeah, I was like, Lord, where did you bring me? Because this is not the church that I was talking to. So I was like, I don't know if I'm in the right place. But that was the address I was given. So I was like, okay, just go in. I was like, okay, God, like, you know where my heart's at. You know that I want to find a church to get plugged into. So I'm just going to go in. Even though I'm scared, I'm going to go in. So I walk in. And unlike most churches that I'm used to where it has a huge lobby where you can just walk right into the sanctuary and hide, I couldn't with this place. I think you were probably like sitting down though on the couches.
Maybe somewhere.
Maybe. Or, he was very servant led, so you were probably helping out. But I just said hi, and then I rushed right into the sanctuary. We didn't meet, but looking back at it, I believe I saw you at the front, sitting at the front with like friends. But yeah, so I get plugged into going to young adults group, and that's where we met. It used to meet at the college campus UNLV. And so I was there early and I was just waiting, and then you guys showed up finally.
Well, you showed up with...
No, I was there by myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amber went to go get you.
Yeah.
And then that's
so my friend who I had met, first friend that I met at the church, she came to get me and she's like, oh yeah, let me go introduce you to the rest of the people. And it's funny because I was like, do I bring my Bible? And she's like, no, you just bring yourself. And so I'm expecting like this huge Bible study, but it was more so of just like-minded people hanging out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
our first interaction was pretty awkward in the sense of
because I tried to give him I gave him a handshake.
It was like the
yeah. So in our culture, because we're both from Hawaii, we're very I guess family oriented, that people have no problem going up to someone, giving them a hug, right?
Yeah.
And so I met his brother was in front of him, so I met his brother first, and I gave him a hug. I'm like, hi, my name is Roxanne. And then he walks away, and behind him was you, and he took some time to approach me. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, maybe this guy doesn't like hugs, so I'm just gonna give you a handshake. So I'm like, hi, I'm Roxanne. So he shakes my hand, but he awkwardly was like, so then he gives me a hug. And I remember it was so fun, like weird and awkward to me, that I text my best friend who lived back in the Philippines at the time. And I was like, I just had the weirdest encounter with some guy that goes to my church. But yeah, so we didn't even really talk that night either.
No, I mean, yeah, ever since that first interaction, we just never, like, we
We would
only
see each other,
see
say
each other
hi.
at, like, yeah, at church or in small groups.
But again, we were just so focused on our own like the Lord. Like we were
Yeah.
just like, whatever, like, okay, cool, like made a new friend or hopefully made a new friend.
Yeah. And then, like, I guess, yeah, fast forward like a few months or a couple months. And
Yeah.
then you came to, what was it? Probably Brandon's birthday.
Yes. So my friend at the time, she's like, hey, I'm gonna go to a birthday, do you want to come with me? And I'm like, whose birthday is it? And she's like, oh, it's one of the guys at church. So I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, because obviously I didn't have any other plans. So I went to the birthday, and I think you were kind of doing your own thing, but I'm a very observant person. So during this time of us not knowing each other, I was still very observant. I was studying for my nursing exam, and that was pretty much my life was church and studying. Yeah, so, and there weren't very many people in my church, so I would see you and just kind of note your characteristics. I wasn't interested in him or anything, but obviously, like, what else am I gonna do but just people watch during church? And then so I could see you during the party. You were still very much the same as you were like at church.
Mm-hmm.
You're very hands-on and helpful, and so that's something that I like started to notice. Oh, but I guess a side note, something that also like stuck out to me when we did have like we did talk, like we didn't talk much, but I remember after the first time we carpooled for group one day, and that after group I had mentioned, hey, if there's a time where you can't carpool with your brother, just let me know and then you can ride with me. I'm here if you need anything. And you said, I'm here for you too, but I'll make sure that you go to God first. And one of the prayers that I had, I'm not saying I had like this whole checklist that the guy I'm going to marry has to hit every check mark, but it's crazy because I had prayed, okay, God, whoever I end up marrying, because I didn't want to date anybody, honestly, without it leading to marriage. Like I wasn't going to date anyone unless I knew like that's someone I wanted to get married to. He is going to point me to the Lord instead of me depending on him or saying like, oh, I got this or we got this. He would always point me to the Lord first. And so when you said that, it's something that stuck out to me because I was like, well, that's weird. No one's ever told that to me. And that's a prayer that I had to the Lord. I'm not saying like, oh, he's going to be my husband or anything like that. But that is something
that happened before we were even talking.
Yeah, that happened before we were talking. And so that just caught my eye. So in a way, I was just kind of very observant of you already because of what you had first, what you had told me. And I just wanted to see like, let me see how this guy is at home too. Yeah. Because we weren't really talking or hanging out.
Outside of like, yeah.
Outside of
or hangout,
group.
like group
yeah.
hangouts.
We had mutual friends, and it's like we just had mutual friends,
And then our first ever like time we like talked, or like our first interaction of talking was after Circus.
So for my birthday, because our birthdays are very close to each other, and so you had texted me happy birthday, and I was like, who is this? So I didn't even have his number, he didn't have my number. And then he later on told me like, oh, I asked our friend for my number so he could say happy birthday, but I was like, who is this? So I'm like searching it on Snapchat, and then it would tell you whose name, and it said Bronson. I was like, oh, that's the guy from church. So I was like, oh, thank you. And then I was like, hey, your birthday's coming up soon, right? And so I just was like, hey, I don't know this guy, but we always see each other in group or at church.
We have the same friends.
We have the same friends. So I'm just going to be like, do you want to share? Maybe we can share birthdays because it would just be easier because our friends all know each other.
Yeah.
And I would save me money because they could just celebrate one thing for both of us, right? So I think that's our first interaction. But
so after that, yeah. So
we didn't really say anything much after that. He was like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, and then so that day came, we went to Circus, hung out, went to we called it the ministry house, where pretty much we all hung out. All the church, friends hung out. Like,
Yeah, but it was only 4 of us who decided, okay, after circus, we'll go hang out at the ministry house and go eat. I think Noah made us what is that, loco moco?
I think so.
Either
We made
pizza,
something.
that they burnt because he kept it in the box, or a loco moco. Anyways, so we decided to just save money, go eat at the ministry house, and
Yeah.
then he lives close to me, and he would normally carpool with his brother or whatever, because he didn't like driving his truck because it ate up a lot of gas. Okay, so I'm like, hey, just ride home with me. Can you drive? Because
it's a far drive.
it was like 35, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, you drive. And I actually forgot about that. Like, we had that conversation.
Yeah.
And so, like, our conversation was just pretty much just talking about who we were.
Like, getting to know each other more. Yeah.
Didn't know who each other was. Like, we knew of each other.
We didn't really talk much about, like, like, oh, yeah, where you from? Like,
Yeah.
getting
Or
to
we
know-
knew we were from Hawaii.
Well, yeah, but, like, not really, like,
get to know each other.
Yeah.
Because it's a long drive.
I
Yeah.
got to, like, learn more about, like, your nursing, and then I think that was also the time you were, like, thinking about doing worship, and I kind of encouraged you.
Oh,
I was
right.
like, hey,
Yes. He's like, hey, you should bring up to know, because his good friend was the worship leader.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you should just bring it up to Noah if you want to. But I don't know how we got on the topic. Did you know that I sang?
I feel like there was a few times at the house
Oh,
you sang.
he would play instrument and then I would sing. Yeah, you would
Like,
play
'cause
the
even
uke.
Asia.
Right.
Yeah.
A good friend, our other good friend, she was on worship. And then so sometimes he would bring his uke and then I would sing, she would sing. And then so he's like, oh, why won't you join worship? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I just kind of like, I was just encouraging you to, like, join,
Yeah,
to use that gift that God gave you.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, that was our
Anyways.
first, like, time actually ever talking.
Yeah, like getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And so.
But then, yeah, after that, I mean, we just built
Saw
a
each other.
built a friendship,
Yeah.
and just saw each other at church and hangouts, group hangouts.
Yeah.
And then
We didn't really talk. Like,
But,
we never,
yeah.
even though we had each other's number, it was more so like, hey, how are you doing? Doing good. We never really, like, were
Yeah.
flirtatious or.
well, because even like, so yeah, like, my mindset wasn't in a place of, like, I'm looking for a relationship, but
If it
for
happened.
some weird reason, I just started to feel this, like, weird being drawn to her, or attraction, I guess, to her. And I was just like, where is this coming from? Right. Because I was like, I don't think, in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if this will work out. Because, like, she's older than me.
If she's into
And
that.
if she's into that, yeah, if she'd even be into somebody who's younger than her. And I'm just like, I don't think so. I was like, but I just kept having this feeling, and I just didn't know what it was. And then that's when I brought it up to my friend, and I was just like, hey, I don't know what this feeling is. I don't know why I'm feeling it. And he was just kind of like, we'll pray about it, and then left it at that. So I started praying about it, and this
Power of prayer
feelings
works.
weren't going anywhere. And I'm just like, okay, God, like, if, this is not going anywhere, so obviously there's something. And so I talked to my friend again, and he was just like, well, just tell her how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And-
And if she feels the same, you'll
Yeah.
figure it out. And if not,
Then, yeah, if
she's
not, then hey, at least right? And so yeah, I mustered up the courage, because I was like, I don't know, but we'll see. So yeah, I think I texted you. I was like, hey, gotta tell you something. Or
Yeah,
I
it
wanna
was
tell you
like
something.
after you finished. I knew that you finished work pretty late, like
Yeah.
around 6, 7, sometimes 9. But I want to say it wasn't. You didn't text me too late. It was probably like 6, 7, and I get this text, and it was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing good. How are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm good." He's like, "Hey, I have to tell you something," and left me on red. I'm like, waiting. I didn't reply back because I'm like, oh no, I think I did say okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then that's it. I think I waited till like 9 because I'm like, what does this guy have to tell me? Because again, like we never really talked except that one time we'd just see each other. So I'm just like, okay, he's either gonna tell me like, do you want to go hang out, or you're gonna be like, I don't know, be like, I don't know. I didn't know what was going.
Well, so this is what happened, right? This is the reason why
You left me on red.
I didn't leave you on red. I don't even think I read it until the morning.
I can't. Yeah, you did just knock out and stuff,
Yeah,
and
so,
I would that. Yeah.
No, because I got home, right, and I was like, all right, I'm like, this is literally right after I was like telling my friend about
How you
everything, and he was like, hey, just tell her, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna tell her. So then I get home and I'm like, I messaged her, and then I was like, dang, like I started getting a little bit of nerves. So then I was like, I laid down and I was just like, all right, I'm
And
talking to God.
used to play music too. Huh?
Yeah, I'm like talking to God. I'm like praying out there, God, if this is from you, like, all right, then we'll see where this goes. If it's not, if it's if it's like out of selfish desires, then obviously it won't be anything, right? But I just had to know because I don't know why I was feeling this way. So, but through all of that, while I'm talking to God and praying, I knocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think part of me too was like curious, like, what do you have to tell me? Because okay, I guess we can go into that. So yeah, you text me and then you finally wake up to tell me.
I think I sent a pretty lengthy text.
Yeah, but the main point of the text was, I feel drawn to you. I don't know why. And yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I think I asked I don't know if you feel the same way or
Right.
if not, it's
Yeah.
all right. Like,
Yeah.
But I feel like I said if it is, then I was like, I would be interested in seeing what this is.
Yeah.
Like, and we didn't even date right away. It was just like, let's just hang out. Or are you like, okay, yeah, you like, we can go talk about it.
My response to what he was saying was, I also started to feel drawn to him, and I guess it could have been because just seeing how he is. You still are very servant like, and it was whether you were at home, in that encounter, or at church, you were just very servant like. And I think also when you had told me like, I'll make sure to point you to God first, because we didn't even really talk at all. But I think those two things was kind of like, okay, that kind of gave me like an attraction because of just how you were, your character. That was an attractive character, I feel. And so I was like, yeah, I feel drawn to you too. I don't know why, but if you want to talk about it. And so he goes, okay. And then I'm like, all right, where? Thinking, Starbucks or some kind of cafe, go eat because I love to eat. He goes, yeah, we can go up to Lone Mountain.
It's a hike.
Yeah. And I'm just like, but I'm just like, sure, whatever. But really though.
We did go. We got boba afterwards. So
we did go to a cafe. So like that hike, I just remember the hike was more so me getting to know you more. I always saw you as someone quiet, and I was just surprised that you weren't talkative. Like, it's not like you couldn't be quiet, but I just learned a lot about you during that hike. And I just, yeah. It wasn't until we went to the cafe though, where we really were like, okay, so we talked about, well, I guess you told me your intentions. And
yeah,
we really talked about like, okay, what that whole text was about.
Yeah, like what this was, right? Because again, I'm coming from a season where I'm like, okay, God, like,
and we knew.
I told after me focusing on my relationship with God and church, like I told in prayers to God, I was like, okay, the next relationship that you have for me, I'm going to go into it with the intentions of marriage. And so I wanted to make that known to her because I didn't know
how I was either.
And I didn't want to get into any kind of relationship that there was no intention, or like I didn't want to date just to have fun, you know. So yeah, I think we just made our intentions known to each other of like what we wanted. And so we started courting.
Yeah, we started a courting phase, which I know not very many people do, but we didn't want to become official if we didn't see ourselves compatible in a sense, because we're still human. Of course, we both love the Lord, but we still wanted to make sure this was of the Lord and that we even would consider being in a relationship. So I think because of that talk of us knowing what our intentions were if we were to get together, we didn't have to question like, oh, just because we're not committed in a relationship right now means I'm going to go talk to so and so too and see where that goes. No, it was more so, okay, we are going to spend this time getting to know each other and see if it will turn into us dating.
Because obviously, for me, one thing that you look at, right? Like I don't have a checklist, but the most important thing for me is that we believe in the same thing. Like, yeah, we have the same values. Because when you're not equally yoked in a relationship, like, not saying it's not possible, but
to us, it was just very important.
It was important, yeah.
Yeah.
It's important, but yeah, I think that was the whole purpose of the courting phase, was just to see,
getting to know each other.
Learn more about each other, but also see if this is something we were willing to take to marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, also for myself, like I've never dated just to date someone. I knew that, okay, if I'm going to date someone, it would be with a commitment. And so when my previous relationship ended, I was like, okay, well, obviously I don't want to go through breaking, another breakup, not because I couldn't handle it, but I just feel like that's not, we shouldn't give pieces of ourselves just to be like, no.
We both didn't want to waste our time.
Yeah,
like we didn't want to waste our time in a relationship that wasn't going to be fruitful. Yeah, so
we both were on the same page with that. And so after 4 months.
Yep. About 3 months. Yeah, three, almost 4
months. 4 months. You asked me to be your girlfriend. If people are wondering, so why 4 months? Why did it take you 4 months to ask me?
Well, I mean,
he was trying to make sure I wasn't that crazy. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, no. I think for me, well, obviously, in marriage, it's like, what do you look for in a spouse, right? Obviously, yeah, you want to believe, like, have the same beliefs, but you also gotta think like, okay, is this the person that I want to, like, I'm willing to go through, for the lack of better words, like, am I willing to go through all the crap with, Like, is this the person? And obviously, like, she knew my family more, and I didn't really know much. Like, I don't think I met your mom until, like,
the third month?
Yeah.
Second, third month?
Before,
we were just always around.
Maybe like a month before I asked you to be my girlfriend.
Not that I didn't want him to meet my family, but I was also very cautious because my mom wanted me to be very careful of who I would date next. Because it hurt her too. Like when I broke up with my ex, it hurt her a lot, I think, because she didn't want to see her daughter get hurt, right? Again. So I was just a little cautious in a sense of like, it's like when you have kids, like people who date when they have kids. Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyways.
So I wanted to meet like her mom and
my
her
family.
Sister. Yeah. The people who were important to her. And also let them know who I was.
Right. And that was important for me too. But we were just always around his family because we would, church, and then we would hang out. We wanted to make sure that we wouldn't be in a position where the enemy could tempt us. So like we usually hung out at your house because his dad was always home. And then if not, his little brothers would be home. So it just helped better with accountability because we just didn't want to get sin. We didn't want to
put ourselves in the situation,
right
that
could lead us to sin. Come on, you have 2 young people, all right, that like each other. So but you finally were able to meet my family. I didn't know that part. I didn't know. I was just praying like, Lord, when is this guy gonna make it official? Like, is he gonna make it official or what?
So right after that's when I asked you.
Yeah, in October
22nd.
Of 2014. Whoa, that was a long time
I remember the date. She forgot.
Hey, time flies when you're having fun, honey.
But so then that's the start of our relationship.
I think there was a lot of learning.
Yeah.
Because one, I was your first like serious relationship.
I guess with intentions.
Yeah.
Because all my previous relationships, they weren't like, I'm gonna marry this person. Or I don't know if I'm gonna marry this person.
It's just like, I'm just gonna date this person.
It was, yeah, and it wasn't. I didn't really. I never had a relationship that was. I want to say I didn't. I never been in a relationship longer than a year, maybe. Or I never had as long of a relationship as you have.
Yeah, and then for myself, I was with my ex since I was like 14, and at this time, or up until I was 21, 22. By the time we met, I was 24. So it was like, yeah, 2 years prior to we met, I had broke up that relationship. But I definitely was used to one relationship for how many years.
Right.
So I did a lot of relearning. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like really young.
You're learning a lot.
Yeah. I think for you, it was learning to be in a relationship. And then for me,
Learning
it
how
was
to handle a lot.
for me, it was learning to not be a certain way. Yeah. Just because of how I grew up, how I saw relationships in my family. Not that they were
Just like very high maintenance.
in a way of the way
Or high standard.
high standards. So like
Very high, like you can't even see how high.
I was just very prideful when I was younger. My mom raised me to know I had no, like I was always,
We grew up in different environments.
Yeah.
Like the women in her family were the leaders of the family.
right.
You know.
And I think for me growing up like that, I knew my worth and I knew what I brought to the table. And so I was quite prideful. Like I was, the good thing about that though is I knew my worth and I was never in a relationship where I was disrespected. So I didn't have bad relationships, but
Because I mean you were the boss.
yes, but also it took me a lot of relearning.
That's why.
It took me a lot of relearning because I knew that the one thing was when I was in my previous relationship and starting to know the Lord, a huge part of that breakup was because if I got married, I knew that I would have to be under submission of my husband. And I wanted to make sure that the husband I was submitted to knew who the Lord was and had...
After you started building your relationship.
Right.
With them, yeah.
And yeah, like I wanted to make sure that my husband was under the leadership and stewardship of the Lord. And so I had this total different expectation, I guess, of what it would be like in a Christ-centered relationship. I thought it was going to be perfect. Like I was going to be a princess that the Lord told me I was, and that everything would be perfect and I would be catered to. And so with you...
With a silver spoon in her mouth.
No, it's not like I wasn't materialistic. You have to tell people I wasn't materialistic.
Okay.
I wasn't material because I feel like people think
The attitude was very like very
high maintenance.
yeah, very like I'm the ish. You know what I'm saying? Like
because
very privileged.
I knew my worth.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but I also had to realize, I think something that you taught me in our relationship of dating is, yes, I am precious, right? It says in the Bible that a wife is more precious than rubies. Mm-hmm. And so my thinking was, yeah, we're going to get married, right? I'm going to eventually be your wife. So I had that mindset, but I also didn't account for that is true, but I also have to treat people fair and with respect. And I feel like that is something that you've taught me in our relationship, whether it's while dating or in being married, is I have to treat people the way I want to be treated. And I do treat people how I want to be treated, but I just felt like, oh, okay, the Lord said that I'm more precious than rubies and I'm I'm his daughter, so I'm a princess. And so
but she also thought on top of that you could just be bossy to your man.
No.
Like all the other
that was my human flesh, right? But
yeah.
I didn't completely understand what it was like being a daughter of Christ in a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and not that like on my end it's not like I treat her less than, but it's more so like right, like women
I had a different
yeah. Like
view
women
of
desire
things.
yeah. also what women desire love, but men also desire respect. And I think obviously no man should also be in a relationship where you're belittled
or disrespected.
Disrespected.
And it's not like I was I don't think I was disrespectful in a sense of you, like it was abusive.
Right.
But I also
didn't take like all her
pettiness.
Yeah, like I'm like, okay, like no, like, I'm not gonna let you treat me or talk to me like that.
It was more so like when we did get in a fight, like I would, because you were very level minded that I hardly saw emotion from him. That I was like, okay, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you not showing any emotion? So I would be petty at times and like start a fight, and I would just see, I would want to see how he reacted.
She wants to poke the bear. Like just
I wanted to see his reaction, and it just wasn't vibing with what I thought it would be, and I would be like, what the heck? And so
because she learned that I don't play like that.
Yeah.
I'm not like
you play. No, I wasn't trying to play games.
No, but like I'm not like, I don't want to like, yeah, I'm not trying to what's the word I'm trying to think of? Not play games, but like I basically, I'm not trying to let that kind of stuff fly.
Yeah, you know? That's something that I respected, is you know your boundaries, and that's so important for men. And I've told this to my nephew as well, that yes, whoever you're dating should be treated like a queen or a princess, but you in return also need to be treated like a king. If you're going to be respectful of who you're dating, you need to be respected as well. And so I think that's something that you've taught me in a relationship, throughout the course of a relationship, is just to be respectful of how I treat you, just because I feel like, yeah, I do have a lot to offer, but that doesn't mean I can be disrespectful to someone. Yeah. And I guess on your end, it's like you got a whole bag of not craziness, but
I mean, it's a lot. But again, you know, I was willing to go through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the decision you make, as whether you're the man or the woman, like you got to be willing to go through those situations with that person.
Yeah. And I think
and again, like when she said like, oh, like she would try to get me to react a certain way, it's just because for me, I was never, and I'm not emotional, or I'm emotionless, but it's just, I've seen how my dad was with my mom, right? Like I've seen how when they would have arguments, like I've never seen my dad raise his voice or have an instant reaction of like yelling and like yelling back at her. Like he would be pretty calm, and I've never seen him be verbally abusive to her. So like, even though like I've seen my mom, you know, frustrated and angry for something, right? But I've never seen my dad be that way towards her. So I've always used that or seen that as an example of like how I react. Like I'm not like, obviously, yeah, there's something that's going on, or we're disagreeing or we're arguing about something, but I'm not gonna instantly react out of emotion, because that's not gonna do anything. Like obviously she's already all emotions, all high, and if I match that, we're not gonna go anywhere.
chaotic.
Yeah, so I'm just like, a lot of times I would just sit there and I'm just like, all right, God, you need to help me with this crazy woman, because
but
I just like, I would literally pray like, God, give me the words to say, because sometimes there was a lot of times I didn't even know what to say.
Yeah, I remember there was a fight that we had, and it wasn't until I want to say the third fight that we had, and these are like small fights, they weren't huge fights or anything to the point of breakup, but I remember like the third fight we had, I finally was like, why are you so quiet? Like, why don't you say anything? The past ones I was just kind of quiet because I didn't, like, it was such a new relationship, I didn't know what to really say, and I was just like trying to learn things also. But that fight, he was like, if I'm quiet, it's because I'm praying and processing. And that's when I realized like, okay, that's that's what he's doing. He's not trying to be quiet because he doesn't want to solve the issue, because I always want to like solve things right away. And not saying that you don't, but I didn't realize you were processing and praying about what to say to me. But yeah, I think that's so important in a relationship, is to see where the other person is at and not just assume that they know what you're thinking. Like us women, I know it's something where we assume that the man should know what we're thinking, but I know you've told me number of times in the past that you don't know what I'm thinking.
We're not mind readers.
Yeah, and
men are very like we could be very linear at times.
In how you think.
We're not very like all over.
Yeah, we don't. Unlike women,
we're not going like, our mind's not going. I mean, some men. I'm not saying all men, but
right.
We're not like.
I feel for women, we look towards like, okay, if this happens, that happens, that happens, and that happens. For men, it's like, this is what's going on right now. And so let me process what's going on right now. All I hear
is you yelling, and all I hear is you're angry about something.
While a woman can be like, oh my gosh, you're not reacting. Like, we're going to break up, and then this is going to happen. I'm going to be alone. And yeah.
And I'm just trying to think about, okay, how can I just calm this woman down?
But I think another thing that also happened, like in our fight, which I just knew that the Lord he meant for us to be together, because throughout every fight that we had, it was a learning experience for me. And I think the very first fight that we had, normally, if I get in a fight, I would expect the guy to like comfort me. And again, my prayer was that you would point me to the Lord. And like, even though we didn't talk to each other for a few minutes when we did have that fight, I remember the Lord told me, it is not you don't need to depend. He's not who you need to depend on to comfort you right now. It's me. And that was, even though you didn't tell me that, your silence is what I needed, because the Lord spoke to me in that silence. Yeah. And he was like, don't look to him to give you comfort, because that's what you said. That was what I was used to, for the guy to be like, it's okay, like we're okay. But when I didn't hear that,
just wanted to be coddled, like, oh, it's okay, baby, it's okay.
Yeah, be treated like a baby.
But I feel like for me, like the only reason why I always say like I would point you to God first is because like I've always learned that like men will always fail, right? And instead of you looking for that in me all the time, I'd rather you look to that for God.
Right.
Obviously for me the same way, because I would never want to be in a situation where I know there's some relationships out there where they're like, oh, like my wife is hindering my relationship with God, or vice versa, right? Because I don't think that should ever happen, because you shouldn't rely on your spouse. Right. You should never rely on your spouse on building your relationship with God, in the sense of like, or that my spouse should never affect my relationship with God, because I should always be looking to him first,
right,
before going to her,
right,
or vice versa,
right.
And that's why I've always thought that way. Yeah.
And for me, I was just starting to learn that being in a relationship, and so yeah, just looking back at it now, your silence is what I needed, because there's a scripture in the Bible where it says, you be still, right, in the Lord. And just looking back now, while we're talking about it, that moment of silence is what I needed, because the Lord spoke to me. And yeah, so we dated for a good 4 years, and then you proposed.
2018.
Yep. And then we got married. I want to say that first year of marriage was
living in the clouds.
Living the life.
Living in the clouds.
Well, only because prior to us getting married, we never had sex and we never lived together at all. And so obviously the first year of us being married, that was all the fun we had.
Enjoy all the fruits that comes with marriage.
Waiting. Yeah. And so we
But again, we would like to, our whole our process or our thinking is like, we don't believe that you need to do all those things to figure out if that,
like, you don't need to be living together, or have society
sex.
Wants you to think that you need to have sex with someone and live with them in order to have a compatible marriage,
if you're compatible with each other,
and that's not the truth at all.
Yeah, because I feel like
I know many people who
our
did
marriage
both,
has
and
gotten even better.
yeah, I've met people who either lived together or had sex before getting married. They didn't even end up getting married, or they got married and they still ended up divorced.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't be the basis of a marriage.
No.
Just our little side note. And
Marriage
think
is
what you
just
want to
work.
think, but yeah. So anyways, so we get married. Our first year was quite selfish because we got to spend our money on just us, eating out and doing some traveling.
Yeah.
We had some good jobs.
Mostly eating.
We had good careers.
Eating out every night.
Yeah. And well, part of that is because we lived in a studio without a kitchen, and
Yeah.
so that's what we had.
But I mean, like, yeah, it was just we were living on the highs, right? Of like, it's like yeah, we're free, but it's like in the sense of like, oh, we could just do whatever we want
Yeah,
now, you know?
we could have planned accordingly and been a little bit more smart in stewarding things, but we also didn't.
we
I
learned.
think, I think
Yeah.
because we didn't have guidance, we didn't have mentors, we didn't have community that now, which is great for our friends because they got us to like learn from our mistakes. But
Right.
no, but yeah, we were just living life, and I think at
And
that
our relationship with God wasn't very.
we knew we love God,
yeah,
but we
but-
didn't fear Him.
Yeah, and we also we weren't like seeking Him. We weren't doing our readings.
Yeah. I
We
also
weren't praying a lot together.
I want to say because at that point in our marriage, the church that we were attending, it was kind of tiring because we did a lot of serving, right? We were part of another church plant, and there was like stuff going on. So it was just going to church on Sunday and serve, and that's it. Like we just go about our lives the rest of the week.
Right.
Yeah, so we loved the Lord, and we said, yeah, He's at the center of our marriage, but really He wasn't. It was us,
And our selfishness.
ourselves. Yeah, not in a bad way. We didn't
Things
hurt
that-
people.
Yeah, it's
but
just we just wanted to enjoy each other.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't like our relationship with God in the sense of like reading, in
and
prayer.
having a purpose to things like our
Yeah.
money, and we didn't have goals really on
Our
like
vision
yeah.
of where we wanted to go. We were literally just,
we just live in
enjoying
life.
enjoying our good jobs with our good income and just eating and doing whatever we wanted.
Yes, and then so
We didn't even have we had separate bank accounts still.
Yeah, and not that we were against having the same bank account. We just
procrastinated.
We just
and
didn't
never,
care. We're just
never
like,
went to
yeah,
go.
we got money. It's okay. You're not buying anything that you shouldn't be buying. I'm not buying anything I shouldn't be buying. We're good. We're paying our bills. We're good. So towards the us celebrating our second year, going into our second year of marriage, I announced to him that we're pregnant. And so I think that's where things were like, oh, okay. I mean, none of our kids are planned.
Well, that's why. So, side note: make sure you're specific when you pray. When you pray about when you want to have kids, because every time somebody would ask
Or when
us,
you pray at all.
yeah, every time somebody would ask us, "Oh, when are you guys planning on having kids?" or
In
"When do you want to have
couple
kids?" You know, like
years.
we would always just say,
in
"Oh,
the
maybe in a
second
couple years,"
Yeah, and then
not
the
knowing
Lord,
that like
the Lord was like, "Here you go."
yeah, second year,
Yeah.
boom, you're gonna have a baby.
And that point of our marriage, I think we started to take life more seriously before I got pregnant. My dad ended up passing away, and then I had made a decision to actually start living my life for me rather than what my parents expected of me.
And having some sort of vision.
Yeah. And I just wanted, before I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to go to become an esthetician and start a business because that's what I wanted to do before I became a nurse. And then, so I spoke to him about it. And then I find out I was pregnant. And I honestly was just like, oh my gosh, like my plans, like the plans that I have, like, is this a test? Like, should I not pursue that anymore? And then you were very supportive. I think that's something I love about you the most is you're just always supportive of things that obviously because you know the Lord plants things in my heart, but you just never told me, no, that's a bad idea or anything. You've just always been supportive. But yes.
Because my whole thing is if it never negatively affects us or our family, then
Why not?
yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Because I always look at it as like if it's good, it's from God. If it's not good, it's not from God.
Right.
And
so I shared with him, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do this because it would be a loss of income. And at the time, my income was like the main income. He worked, but I brought in a good amount of income being a nurse.
Yeah.
And so not that I was scared, but okay, well, we're gonna have a baby. Like, I want to make sure everything is set. I'm always looking, like, making sure that financially we're set, because that's how I grew up. I grew up with making sure that finances are not going to be a problem. So plan ahead for things. And so I questioned God, like, okay, I'm gonna have a baby. Like, maybe I shouldn't go into business or go to school. But he was very supportive, and he's like, it'll be okay. Like, God will provide. And so I think I found a job that was willing to work with my schedule, or did I quit? I quit one of my jobs because I was going to school, and another job that I was going to take on again. She's like, "Oh, yeah, you're gonna want to decide if you want to work or you want to go to school." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's a red flag. I'm gonna go to school." But yeah.
Yeah, I think you just went to school.
Yeah, I just went to school, so that meant like one income.
Which we survived. I mean, God.
Praise the Lord.
God brought
I
us
don't
through.
know, like, if you ask me, like, how
Our
did we
bills were
survive that?
paid,
We have
just-
no idea. I mean, on my part, I think it is planning, because how we stored our, we weren't huge spenders. Like, we love to spend money on food, but we weren't very materialistic people, for one. And I guess I did have money put aside for certain things. Like, I had my, what is that called? Disability insurance through work, where if I did get pregnant, I was able to use that extra money on whatever. So I planned. So financially, I had planned certain things. So thank the Lord. We can do a whole nother video on that. But yeah, we survived off of your income.
Yeah. But then here comes the second year comes, and that was pretty.
That was a rough year,
It was
y'all.
pretty rough.
That is when I was
the
like,
rough patch of our
like,
marriage.
should we just get a divorce? Like, the reason why I think people really go into divorce, or at least from my standpoint, because you didn't really talk about divorce. I was very emotional, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Well, I guess we should just get a divorce because it might be easier.